Lelouch vide Britannia, the search for identity and meaning. Lelouch is a character with many different masks. He's a student, a revolutionary, and an emperor. There is an inherent contradiction in all of these. The student side of himself cares for his friends above all, whereas the revolutionary Zero oftentimes does things to actively harm his friends, as we see with Shirley. Zero epitomizes results over everything. There is no need for empathy as shaping the future and changing the world takes precedence over this. Zero is a symbol, someone who wholeheartedly represents changing the world, and anything that could hinder that process, such as considering the effects of taking lives, should be blocked out, as it would harm the goals of Zero. There is a major contradiction in Lelouch's persona as a student and as Zero. In Episode 1, Lelouch explicitly states that his current life as a student is nothing but a lie. The feeling of entrapment and the pressure of lying to himself every day is so great that he can't help but want something more. He wants to fulfill his revenge, yes, but he also wants to satisfy his strong desire to matter, driven by his meaningless life as a student. This desire to matter and his need for revenge is what causes him to accept the geese willingly without question. For Lelouch, there is no other choice. This is one of the only moments in the beginning of the series where his resolve is truly strengthened. This idea suggests some naivety in Lelouch. He doesn't consider the effects of the geese and what it would mean to resign himself to being a murderer, because he's so driven by his need for importance. The original need for revenge was only the spark that fueled his increasing need for importance in a student life where he had none. Lelouch believes he's so committed to his goals that he'd be able to withstand the moral issues of violence. However, as we see, this is not true, and Lelouch himself doesn't find this elusive meaning. He's been searching for the majority of the show, even though he expects that escaping his student life would allow him to find purpose. So why doesn't Lelouch find purpose in becoming Zero? Well, there are a multitude of reasons. Lelouch doesn't believe that Zero is a true part of him. He sees it as a necessary fabrication to achieve his ultimate goal of revenge. Him making it seem like a fabrication allows him to temporarily escape the moral issues of violence. He separates his identity to such a degree that he doesn't perceive his true self as being the person committing these actions. In the short run, this allows Lelouch to commit terrible acts without feeling a shred of guilt. However, this guilt exists inside Lelouch, and it truly sinks in the quiet moments where he can no longer hide behind his Zero persona. It crushes him even more when his mask is off and where he has no protection. Lelouch separating these two identities serves as a good short-term way for him to be able to commit violent acts and achieve his temporary goals. But in the long run, it only exists to further contribute to his insecurities of feeling like he doesn't have a true self. By resigning himself to constant fabrications, he begins to lose the meaning he attempted to find by creating these different identities in the first place. In constant lying and deceit, Lelouch struggles to find true meaning behind his actions. This stems from his belief that his true self is separate from these two identities. This belief serves to grant him an ideal self, one which is pure, good, and important. This self is separate from the weak Lelouch Lamproche and the murderous Zero. This grants him temporary satisfaction, although the issue with it is that in the long run, it truly destroys any kind of meaning for Lelouch when he does something in his Zero or Lelouch Lamproche identity. He wonders what the point of committing to something truly is, when the one committing to it is just a fabrication. It also serves to increase his guilt in the long run, where he sees all these violent actions committed by the lie of Zero. He wonders what the point of doing all this is, because he's taking lives with no true weight. He's a fraud, escaping the guilt of his actions by hiding behind a mask. Ironically, this is the thing that truly makes him guilty. In short, for a good chunk of Code Geass, Lelouch is essentially lacking a true purpose because he's convincing himself the two major sides of himself are lies. Lelouch would never be able to find a true purpose and true commitment to his actions if he thought this way for the entire show. What Lelouch begins to realize is that there is an inherent truth existing in all his fabrications. His Lelouch Lamproach self-experiences the loss of Shirley, this fact proving that there is a true emotional attachment existing in this life, and that it isn't all a lie. His Zero self-experiences tactical defeats and losses. These experiences affect him profoundly, to the point where Lelouch sees that there is true emotional value and weight in all of it. Lelouch may deceive, but what he was beginning to forget was the true reason as to why he deceived. He has people he loves and wants to protect, and he has goals he wants to achieve. This exists in all his identities. Furthermore, Lelouch begins to develop a genuine understanding of the world, brought about by all the different lenses he views it from. Lelouch sees the world through the eyes of a murderer, a teenager, and an emperor. Even though him separating his identities did him harm, it also allowed him to cultivate a genuine view of the world. His ability to separate these sides of himself allowed him to create an all-encompassing ideology that could truly change the world. Yes, it's true that he doesn't fully separate his identities, and they aren't fully unbiased fabrications. And this is reflected by the fact that Lelouch's ideology isn't perfect. If we truly look at the Zero Requiem, is it going to be the solution to every problem in the world? Definitely not. Lelouch's ideology is grappled by some bias. However, it is the fact that he sees the world in many ways, which allows him to create this ideology in the first place. So due to this ideology, Lelouch has created from his scattered identity. He truly understands that it is necessary to lie and create these fabrications. But hang on, weren't these fabrications the very thing that wavered Lelouch's resolve and increases his guilt? Yes, they were. Lelouch development is him understanding the importance of all these different identities and how they were truly necessary in him achieving his goals. By understanding this importance, Lelouch manages to truly create the purpose he had been looking for. He no longer imagines he has a true self separate from all these sides of him, and he now sees that these contradictions all make up his true self. This is highlighted in the scene where Lelouch rejects a world without lies, suggested by his parents. Lelouch has understood the importance of all these contradictions in himself, and he rejects anything that would go against this view of himself he's created. In this moment, he accepts the necessity of lies, but on a deeper level, he rejects the idea of delusions. Lelouch deluded himself into believing that he had a pure and good self that existed outside of Zero and Lelouch Lamproach. Lelouch doesn't just reject a world without lies. He rejects a world where people can only be one thing. This idea was truly formed by believing he himself was only one thing, and that Zero and Lelouch Lamproach couldn't exist inside him. By realizing they exist inside him, he manages to gain something his parents never had, a sense of self-acceptance and a genuine goal that would benefit the world and not just himself. In this scene, it's also important to highlight how Lelouch breaks some of the mental barriers that held him back. He kills God, and it breaks to pieces. This can reflect how Lelouch has destroyed the side of himself that was fueled by his need to fulfill his revenge. In this moment, Lelouch kills his parents, not as a way to fulfill his revenge, but because he's realized the truth of the world, and he's strengthened his resolve. An important thing about revenge is that when you finally achieve it, it does not die. It sends you down a path of hate, and gives you the idea that you can only achieve things by satisfying your anger. Lelouch's revenge slowly dies away, and he kills his parents for a love of the world more than anything. Lelouch has truly gained an appreciation of the world and wants things to change. Another thing to highlight about Lelouch's revenge is that he feels insecure about it. For a large amount of code geese, he believes that he's taking advantage of the Black Knights to satisfy his revenge. He sees himself as only pretending to care about the Japanese having freedom, while his true desire is to achieve revenge. However, this is not true. Lelouch does care about the Japanese, but this fact was obscured by his own insecurity that he was only doing things to fulfill his revenge. In an effort to eradicate this view that he was only doing things for revenge, he begins to delude himself into being altruistic and only doing it to give Newly a better world. All of this obscures Lelouch's true motivations, and the truth is that they all exist inside him. But Lelouch's insecurities make him feel the need to delude himself. These delusions are metaphorically shattered when he kills God. With his parents gone, that insecure side of himself that was guilty about the delusion that he was only doing it for revenge is gone. Lelouch now sees things with clarity, and he can finally reaffirm who he truly is, what the world truly is, and what his motivations truly are. In the end, Lelouch begins to embrace his Emperor persona. However, he does not feel insecure, and he does not perceive this as an aspect of himself that exists outside of him. In fact, Lelouch's true understanding of himself comes after he kills his parents. He embraces his worst aspects, such as egoism and petty need for importance, and culminates it into his identity as Emperor. The reason why he manages to play this part to perfection is because he accepts that it exists as a part of him. If Lelouch had not accepted his contradictions as existing within him, he would not be able to play the part of the Emperor. He would have become insecure about who he truly is, and he would struggle to find a reason for why he's acting like this. This is the complete opposite of Lelouch's Emperor persona, who has everything completely planned out, and all insecurities are not present. The true message here is that you are you. Everything you do exists as a part of you. And if you try and delude yourself into believing that it's not the truth, you'll end up feeling pain, guilt, and a lack of meaning in life. Lelouch's final act epitomizes all this. True resolve and true identity brought out by that resolve. No one will know who Emperor Lelouch really was. Yet Lelouch is content because he himself knows who he is. He's someone who truly believed in something. All of these sides of himself serve to further a true goal that he genuinely believes in. In this moment, Lelouch has put aside his selfish egoism. He doesn't need to be loved as the symbol of zero. He is, in fact, happy with being hated. This is because Lelouch has found something deeper within himself that brings him great satisfaction. He genuinely is so wholly committed to changing the world that how people perceive him doesn't matter. He doesn't need to project his identity and desires to others. In fact, he does the very opposite, as he understands it is the true way to achieve those desires. Lelouch has eradicated his true identity from the world, and yet it doesn't matter because he knows who he is. Suzaku finally kills him in an act that finalizes the way Lelouch will forever be remembered. The Zero Requiem is truly Lelouch accepting his worst aspects. He realizes hate, egoism, and the need for power all exist within him, and he capitalizes on that. However, Lelouch no longer feels shame of this existing within him, because he now has a true understanding of himself and a goal to get behind. His insecurities are no longer exemplified. In fact, he is able to atone for his worst aspects with his death. He doesn't run away from it. He accepts his moral impurities and takes the punishment. Lelouch has found truth in all of this. He uses lies, but he understands that they exist in truth. This truth is what further allows him to go through with his plan, and why he smiles when he's about to get killed. By the end, the name Zero has fully become what it was always meant to be. The man behind the mask is no longer important, and Zero is the sole defender of everyone who has injustice committed to them. It creates a sense of unity, which parallels to the way Lelouch has found unity within himself. In conclusion, Lelouch has truly accepted his true identity as the culmination of every side of him, and not something separate to that. He has found meaning due to this genuine identity he's developed, and that meaning has allowed him to change the world and bring about peace. Thank you all for watching. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel.